Welcome to another episode of Euphoric, the podcast. I'm here with Dalissa, and I have some juicy questions to ask her today because she is a psychic and a medium. And anytime I'm in front of someone who has a connection with something so much deeper and something so much bigger, I just need to know what is going on with alcohol. So, can you just, before we even get into your story and how you got into this work, tell us a little bit about how alcohol affects our energy?
Oh, I have chills even as you ask that question because I think it's a really important factor in my work. And I also talk about it a lot with my psychic development students because they often ask, how can I increase my intuition or how can I develop my own psychic abilities? And one of the things I almost always mention is the use of alcohol and how alcohol is on the frequency scale a lot lower than what we need to be at in order to access higher frequencies and to be able to work with our intuition more. And so when we consume alcohol, it lowers that frequency, the vibration that our body is naturally vibrating at. And so anyone that is consuming alcohol, I am not going to judge them for whatever their life choices are. But if they are drinking and doing psychic spiritual work, they may notice now that maybe they've heard this today that alcohol is affecting the way they're able to connect, let's say, to source energy or to another dimension. And I personally talk to people a lot about how I don't drink when I might literally like maybe have one cider a year, if that. Like because I've seen how it affects my energy so much. And it is absolutely critical, in my opinion, not to drink, I would say even 24 hours before any kind of client work with spiritual psychic work because I think it takes a good 24 hours, maybe even longer for some people, for that energy of the alcohol to actually move out of their system. Because if they have just consumed alcohol and they're working on a client, the information that comes out of them is like the filter that they are processing their own body and energy through. And so if they have consumed alcohol, I think it really does impact what they're able to do in session work. Does that make sense?
Yeah, of course. And just think about it personally for your life. Like, if you're not able to tap into that higher self or that intuitive voice of yours, like what kind of decisions or choices are you going to be making? And just kind of stuck in that like unconscious sleepwalking mode, really, where you don't have the biggest guide and the biggest resource of your life to be, helping you along the way. And you're not the first psychic medium I've had on the show that's just like, you guys, like, this stuff is not going to help you connect with that. And I've heard a lot of shamans and just people who are really connected with like the spiritual world, like they won't touch it. You know what I mean? It's not conducive to that. And it's so interesting because we get so many different perspectives on it. Like, obviously, this is like a very known felt sense thing that you have and with your students and stuff like that. But there's also like the neuroscience behind it. And there's recent studies coming out how like alcohol will make it so that your different regions of the brain don't speak to each other anymore. And it's just like, aha, like obviously, we have these experiences, but sometimes it's so cool to be like, this isn't, it's not just my experience. It's not just your experience. Like, this is actually what's happening in the body. So I just think that's so cool. All right, let's go a little bit like into the how the hell did you get into this work? Because I think so many of us, want to tap into our intuition more, just want to have that sense of guidance. And, you are able to do that not only for yourself, but just so many other people as well. How did you like stumble upon, becoming a psychic medium?
This was not what I thought I would be doing for my profession. And no offense to everybody out there that is in the spiritual industry, but this was not what I thought I was going to be doing. I actually, before this all happened in 2015, I was a dating coach and a matchmaker, and I had different hosts doing speed dating events for my company in different parts of the US. So that was really what I was into and helping people with. But overnight in 2015, so I'm coming up on almost the 11-year anniversary, I was on a trip to New York and I was staying at a friend's house. A very long story. I'll give the short version today. But I was staying the night there, and it was the same night that he had just found out that his aunt had died unexpectedly. And while I was asleep, I could see her. She came to me while I was sleeping in the astral state, and I could see her hair, her facial features. She didn't move her mouth at all, but she said to me through telepathy, "Please tell my nephew I'm okay. I made it to the other side." And so the next morning, I get up out of bed and I'm coming out of that like sleep state going, "Oh my God, I saw his aunt. She just died." Like, I went out to the kitchen and gave my dear friend Peter the message. But then my brain like wouldn't shut off. And I thought, okay, this Aunt Barbara who I never met could come through. What else am I not touching that is trying to get my attention? So on that trip to New York, I was at a retreat, the Omega Institute, and there was a lot of binaural beats that we were listening to while we were there. And I really felt intuitively like that was the key to unlocking the psychic awareness. So after I got home from New York, I started replicating it. I got my headphones out and started listening to binaural beat audio files. And I would have someone in mind that where I would have permission from. And we would just start writing down everything I was seeing, feeling, hearing, just dumping it out on the piece of paper while I was listening to that audio file. And then I would get on the phone and tell them everything that I got. And so many people were like, nobody knows that about me. How did you know that? Like, oh, okay, my beta test is working. so, so that's what started everything. So it was August of 2015. And then I've just developed the company more and more over the years. And now I teach people how to fish rather than just hand them the fish.
Yeah. Okay, well, I'm gonna go into both of those territories because we want some fish today, but I also want to know more about like, I think it's a concept that like, oh, some people have this and it's just like this specialized, calling or destiny that people tap into and I've heard a lot of cool stories like that. It's just like one day this appeared and I knew and stuff like that. But I think that you also have this theory that we all have this ability, and it's just a matter of like how do you, like kind of mold it out of the sculpture, or like really refine it and really start listening to it. So if you were talking to someone who's like, Delissa, I've never seen my grandmother from beyond, I've never had these kind of experiences, like I'm not psychic, I'm not tuning into any of that kind of stuff. What would you say? Like, well, here's how you can start to develop it for yourself.
Yes. So I would think of it as that frequency scale where you're trying to get your own personal vibration as high as you possibly can, because at that higher level of frequency, then you're connecting in to the other side. And frankly, you could look at past lives, you could make predictions about the world, you could talk to your grandmother who's over there. So all of that is at that higher frequency. So people can start to think about it as like if they were to go to the doctor and the doctor is giving them tips for how to live a less stressful, happier life, those same things apply here. So think of it as like more hydration, more sleep. Are you spending time out in nature? All of those things would be kind of the basis and the foundation for increasing your own vibration. But then if you start layering in things like journaling and doing meditations, and you can kind of decide based on the individual what kind of meditation you want to do. There's all different kinds. And there's even meditation in motion where maybe you love walking in nature and you don't have any earbuds in listening to anything, or you want to go bicycle around your community. Great. All those can be considered meditation in motion as well. But I think the meditation allows for more space, and that also helps to elevate our frequency because we do need some energetic space in order, I think, to bring information in. So if you're clearing out kind of the energetic debris or gunk with meditation and journaling, then you will naturally feel like you are more in tune with your intuition. You'll feel like there's an increase in the amount of nudges that you're getting. And so that's all really important. But we don't have to, I think, have a bunch of tools that we have to have in order to do this. Like when I first started out, I would take different classes and oracle cards and pendulums and tarot, like all of it. But I don't think we actually need any of those tools. But some people feel more confident. I know I did when I was starting out, that if I had something tangible in my hands and I was practicing with those, like maybe even pulling one card in the morning each morning to see what my own energy was going to be like for the day and maybe something I'd have to work through that day. It's a very easy practice that beginners can do. But I'll say one of the biggest roadblocks that I found in my students over the years is they don't believe they can and they block it. And so, if you take nothing else away from this conversation, everyone out there, please be confident. And I mean that in a way that is loving and kind. I want you to know that you are worthy of it all, and you are worthy of receiving information from the universe. You are worthy of being able to be a conduit for spirit. You can hear spirit and communicate with spirit right here today. You don't have to wait. You already have it within you, and so it's more just about raising that frequency like a radio dial and allowing it to happen and allowing the really high frequencies to come through. And I'll just say on that as well, spirit saying in my ear to remind people that it is important to set the intention that you are connecting with the highest frequencies. So normally I will say, before I start doing energetic work, I'm connecting with the highest frequency, dimension, and light, and only that which is of that is able to connect with me. And then afterwards, making sure I clear my energy.
Yeah. Well, I see what you see mean about confidence completely because I think that there are a lot of these signals and these messages that we get, but we can write them off or intellectualize them away and just be like, no, it has to be bigger than that or something like that. And I'll give you just a few small examples. Like my grandmother passed in 2021 and she was, my biggest role model and almost raised me as a mom herself. And she would communicate to me after she passed, even like the day she passed through music. And so it was like, some of the ways like I couldn't think of a song that I knew was integral to like our relationship and she would just like show it to me right there and I was like I know I intellectually would have never found this song, you know what I mean, and I just know she's there. We have like symbols too that we share that she'll communicate with like wildflowers and the amethyst crystal and stuff like that. But just the other week or so, I there was this song, this like lullaby that I found that was, like a very folksy Polish kind of lullaby. And I was like, I just knew I was connected to it. I knew that my grandmother was speaking through it, but I didn't realize until 2 years later that intellectually it was the same lullaby that she sang to me. And it was only that I was able to prove that through like, oh yeah, these were the words, because the version I heard was just instrumental. But I already knew she was like talking to me through that, and it wasn't until later I could like prove it for real and stuff like that. So it's just interesting, like these little examples that like we really need to listen to them. Or for example, I've you probably know that book Signs, where you communicate with your ancestors and stuff. And like I've done little tests on like my grandfather, who I maybe wasn't as close with because he died when I was much younger. And it's just like the sign came in right away. And I'm like, this stuff is uncanny, but like you can't think you're crazy. You have to believe in more than a coincidence, and you have to start believing that like these messages are coming from you and really trusting that inner voice. And I know that's a big part of your work as well, of like, yes, there's the fun predictions and astrology and all the kind of cool stuff that we can use, but it's like, how do you start really trusting your own inner voice as the voice of guidance?
Yes, I have, over the years, I think my work has really adjusted because at first I, would do a lot of predictions. And for several years, I became known for making world predictions and what's coming next. And it was pretty recent where Spirit downloaded into me over a weekend that totally unexpected. And they said, you need to move away from all of the fear with the predictions because you've already said everything you need to say about how we're going through this dismantling period. Like you've already said it, but you keep saying it and you're creating, fear and panic. So you really need to be more mindful to bring about, well, what do we do about it? Like, what do we do next? Because there's a lot of things we don't have any control over. We can't control someone else and what they do and what they say, but we can control, what's happening within ourselves. So I think it's really vital that we understand that our own energy is what we have probably the most control over. And when we really sit in that and create that space, we can do anything we want with it. Um, so these days, my work is probably more focused on what do we do next instead of, here's what's going to happen with the war and here's what's going to happen with the financial system. But I still feel like people want to hear about what's coming because they feel in some way a little less stressed, or maybe they feel like they have a little bit more control, but that control is an illusion. And So I think it's important for all of us to recognize that we can only do what we can do with flow and with ease. And I think we can only be in the frequency of fear or in faith in any given moment. We can't be in both. And so if you're consuming a lot of news or media or the people you're surrounding yourself with and you're feeling more fear or panic, then I think the question could be, how could I lean into faith more? Whatever that means to you. Could be faith in your own higher self, the universe. So, how do you want to lean into that more? Because as you do that, you'll probably feel less connected to the fear and the panic.
That's so good. Okay, and I think you know where I'm going with this one next, but can you give us a little bit of that, that 5-year future that you just described that you kind of lean away from? If you were to share a few of like the insights that you get about what's coming or, how some of these global situations are going to pan out or anything like that, because I know that we know we got the teas, so I think we do want some of that meat too.
There are going to be changes to all different areas of our life. We think about the systems that we're plugged into right now. So, whether it's education, healthcare, our 9 to 5 corporate jobs, there's so many systems that we rely on. And that's for, a variety of countries around the world where the people who live there are tied into so many different systems. And they might be getting money from one system or some kind of assistance, and so think about it between now and the early 2030s. That's the time period Spirit has given me is like taking me into the early 2030s. So between now and then, there's going to be drastic change like we've never seen in our whole lives. And I feel like by the time we get to the early 2030s, we're not going to recognize a lot of our own life anymore because of how much it's going to change. For example, we know about the, colleges and university, higher education system that to me feels like it's gonna go over this major overhaul in the coming years. So anybody out there listening that works in higher education, I would be in the ears of your deans and the boards that are involved with your campus because I really feel like artificial intelligence is going to create a whole education system that is geared to the individual. So the days of going into a classroom and learning the same thing that maybe 100 other people in the lecture hall are learning at the same time, those days feel like they're departing. Feels like it's going to be where we step into some kind of virtual reality and the entire syllabus and what we're learning is going to be geared specifically to what it is that I want to do. And so the days of having like college admissions where you're one of few that get selected and then you go into the same kind of protocol as so many other students, I think that that's going away. But I also think healthcare is going to be shifting and changing. Spirit has channeled in that the more self reliant we are, the more that we have our own tools and resources to get through, different health crises, things that we have on hand at home that we can use, the better off we'll be. They've said over and over again, my spirit team of angels, guides, and my ancestors, some of which I have photos of behind me, they've said over and over, you need to be self-reliant. And the more you can do that, the easier these next several years are going to be. And so when people think about healthcare, maybe consider like what would I need to have at home for the next 30, 60, 90 days where I wouldn't have to leave my home. So I don't think about preparation in a way that's fear-based. I think about it to give you more flexibility because I think there'll be more and more people, especially this year and next year, that will want to stay at home more. They won't want to go out. And so if you want to have the maximum amount of flexibility in your life, look around and see like what do you need to have a little bit more of on hand so that if something happens and people are all running to the grocery store that you don't feel like you have to have that panic to go do the same. So I would treat it as an exercise in maximizing your flexibility. But I do think that we will see more and more increase as it comes to war and countries fighting each other. So that feels like it's going to be a big storyline this year. I think this summer is going to get very loud in terms of the aggression and the fighting. And that may be part of the reason why people may not want to go outside or, go to their big events that are happening in their community. I think more people will also be, when I think about North America, if I think about United States and Canada, it feels like more people are going to be moving inland. So migration feels like there's going to be this next wave of where people are moving to. And I've channeled in recently that there is this highlight that goes along the West Coast and the East Coast of North America. And it feels like forces coming in. And so I don't want to create any fear or panic with anybody that lives on the coast.
I do.
I know, I know. I'm like, oh, shoot. Um, Here's what I would say: trust your intuition. And I just got head to toe chills as I say that out loud. If you feel like something is funky and you feel maybe even a heaviness around where you live, I'm not saying you have to leave it forever, but if you ever feel like I'm not supposed to be here anymore, or I'm not supposed to be here for the next week, please trust your intuition. And I know that's going to be easier for some people to do than other people. I haven't been shown that there's going to be necessarily like mass casualties with civilians, but it has felt that the East Coast and West Coast will be targeted. And I remember channeling several months ago where Spirit showed that the East Coast of the United States actually had what felt like foreign military, like foreign troops, the energy of that rushing the East Coast. So there may be some kind of talk about invasion, or another country deploying weapons that would be targeting the East Coast. But I also believe in the power of intention, and those that believe in the power of prayer. I think that we can change some of this and we can redirect that energy elsewhere. My intention has really been recently that leaders of different countries have, my country, other countries that have level heads that can come to the table and have mature negotiations and conversations. And so that's been my intention, because I want to surround all of that in love and in high vibration so that cooler heads prevail and that we don't end up having any of these catastrophes happen. But I do think Earth will get a little bit louder as well in terms of natural disasters. I think we're going to see some major, major earthquakes. And I'm just hearing in my ears, I say that there will be an earthquake that ends up breaking a record. And it feels like it's over. It feels like it could be this year or early next year. Timing is a little bit fickle, especially in the energy these days, because everything is moving so fast. But it does feel like there's going to be a record breaking earthquake. And I would watch for an earthquake that would be significant with its size and damage. They're bringing me into Asia, but I feel like I'm by Japan. So I'm over in that neck of the woods. So yeah. So Spirit, when I do these and start talking, I start getting all kinds of downloads. But that's kind of it in a nutshell. But I would also say on the heels of that, that we chose to be here alive right now, because we are the people that are going to help shine the flashlight, into what we're doing next. We're the way showers. A lot of your audience are the way showers. And I hope that they feel that and they can take that in, and that they remember that they chose to be here right now, because we'll be part of the rebuilding. It's like the tower card in tarot. Right now we're going through the tower that's on fire and it's going to burn to the ground. Then next is the phoenix rising from the ashes, and we're all going to be a part of what that looks like next.
Yeah. Oh, it's so fascinating. It just reminds me of this like concept. I have this very big philosophy that, our ancestors lived in times that, had survival was their main purpose. And there's so much hardships that had to happen. And, we have it very easy, I think, these days, and there's so much more opportunity these days. And so it's like we have to take leverage of that for our ancestors. They didn't have that opportunity. But I also think sometimes of these futures that are very unknown. We don't know what's going to happen in the future. Like we've had so much global stability and peace for so long, and yet look, now we're in a war, right? Like as we're literally speaking, and we have no idea how different systems will change in the future. And just imagine in 200 years, we're all living on a space shuttle, right? Because the Earth didn't sustain us, and or we, whatever. But anyways, I always think of like if you have the opportunity right now in this time to do what you love, to make an impact, to go see the world, like do not put this stuff off. You know what I mean? No idea how the world will change, and we literally are living in this that's ripe time of opportunity today, right now, and that just gives me more of like that feeling of like never put off what you want to do. Like truly, really embrace every, moment that you have and go live the life you really want because, we really live in such a beautiful era right now before maybe things are going to get heavier or, compared to the past when they really truly were. I want to go back into one more facet that, you talked about the education system. I actually used to work at a university, so I hear you on that. The healthcare and just like the kind of global, phenomenons that are happening. What do you think is going to happen to careers as well? Because all of these things are shifting. AI is taking over so much, like how do you see that kind of like what do you think will be of value as we kind of move into this new era?
Think a lot of what's going to be moved up almost like on the priority scale or what people are going to deem as valuable moving forward are things that are going to make our lives a lot easier. So if I were to be talking to someone right now that, wants to figure out what they're going to do with their career and they're saying, "Oh, I'm going to go back to school." I'd first ask, "Well, what are you going back to school for?" Because sometimes I hear from people like, "Oh, I'm going to go back and go to medical school." And I kind of cringe a little bit because not I love education, I value education, I love learning, but here's the thing. I think some of the programs that people are going into right now, it's almost like they don't matter in the same way by the time they get done with it. And so I would kind of nudge more people into becoming their own bosses and creating businesses or some kind of technology. Apps feel like they'll end up changing, but even for now, apps are okay. But I think the future really is what makes the human life easier. And I think a lot of what the jobs these days are about, they will end up being removed, taken away because we're already seeing it. There are jobs that one person is doing right now, but AI could do it in a fraction of the time that the human is doing it. And I think with the change in the economy that's coming and war and everything that's going to be changed as a result of that, there's going to be a lot of companies that even without AI, I think would have, had to lay off a lot of employees. Like that's what it felt like without AI. But you add artificial intelligence in, then it's like companies lay off employees, but then they don't even feel like they need to bring them back at any point because now AI has stepped in and taken over. It would not surprise me if we start seeing conversations with government leaders around universal basic income and what that looks like, because I think there are a lot of people that today in your own circle that will not have jobs like they've had for all of these years. And so there will be people that will end up creating their own business or product that will have it almost feels like a side hustle with that and then some other kind of income that comes in which could be the universal basic income. But I do think there's still going to be entrepreneurs and people that are creating incredible things during all of this tech revolution because there's Uranus is going into Gemini, and by the time this comes out, it probably already is in Gemini, and that is going to be a 7 year period where all things communication, technology is going to be completely revolutionized, and we either probably need to adopt that and jump into that, or we may get left behind. But I feel like energetically there's going to be a lot of people that feel like they're going through like a midlife crisis of sorts, especially the people who are used to saying, I work at this company. My title is this. This is what I do. Like when somebody, you're introducing yourself at an event, somebody said, "Oh, well, what do you do?" And you're used to like telling them what you do for a living. It feels like we're getting so drastically far away from that in the coming years that some people won't even know, like, who am I anymore? Like, if I don't identify with my job, how am I going to describe myself? And so I think there's going to be a lot of opportunity for healers, life coaches, therapists that are working with clients that go, I don't know who I am anymore. And so I think there's going to be a period where people are going to have to be sorting that out. And so if you've even thought about joining, the spiritual realm in terms of being a practitioner or well-being industries, yes, like we are definitely going to need more of that because not everyone's going to want to turn to AI to talk about things that they would want to talk to a human being about. And so I still think those jobs will be prevalent and important. But I think there's a lot of jobs that won't. The ones that I feel aren't going to be touched as quickly would be more like the blue collar jobs. So, mechanics, plumbers, electricians, things like that feel like they're going to still be needed by all of us. Uh, the kind of 9 to 5 corporate type of job, I think those are going to be going fast in terms of how they turn over to AI. So there's pros, there's cons with everything.
Well, you and I are definitely in unison of just like, being able to help someone find meaning and especially a lot of people maybe resorting to drinking more and stuff like that. Like I run a certification that trains alcohol-free coaches. It's like we are going to be needed, right? And there's just so much work to do. And I think that that's a great question, even whether without the upheaval or not. Like I think a sense of meaning, a lot of people, get the title or get this promotion or get this whatever. And it's just like they come to a point where they're like, but I don't feel a sense of meaning. I don't feel like this matters at the end of the day. And it's like there's so much of that, either you call it the midlife crisis or whatnot, where we're hungry for that. And I do think that the guides, the mentors, the coaches, the people who are able to like help you with that self-reflection and that deep analysis are just going to be so important as we continue moving on. Okay, you mentioned a little bit about the planets. I feel like I have a million questions, but we're gonna be closing up pretty soon. But astrology is something that you can use as like a predictive tool, as a self-assessment tool and stuff like that. What do you think, obviously everyone's probably familiar with at least their sun sign. What do you think is like one of those, underutilized parts of astrology that a lot of people maybe don't know or don't talk about that you think is actually really, really either valid or something that's really helpful?
On the heels of what we were just discussing about the change in jobs, I would look to your north node. I would look, it looks like a little horseshoe in your chart. Everybody has one. And I would want you to look to see where that north node is, what house it is in, which is going to be a number 1 through 12 on the pie slice, and look at what the zodiac sign is for that. So you can put that together and you can talk to an astrologer. You can go on to AI or Google. You can type in, you know, I see my north node in the seventh house in the sign of Leo. What does that mean? AI will tell you what it means. But the north node really is, I think of it as like that northern star, the thing that your soul wanted to really aim the arrow at in this lifetime. So if you're somebody out there questioning, well, what if my job goes away? Or I can't quite figure out what my like quote unquote purpose is, right? I would look to your north node and those ingredients of the house and the sign to give you clues as to what you came here to do. So, for example, my North Node is in Leo in the third house. And I've been talking to an astrologer friend of mine, and he summed it up for me like this: the North Node in Leo in the third house, the house of communications, that Leo is courageous, it leads with its heart. And so you can summarize it as my North Node should be embodying the queen energy, which is Leo, royalty, being the queen of curiosity. And I thought, oh my gosh, like my mind was blown because once I heard that, I'm like, yes, I want to be the queen of curiosity. I want to ask all the questions. I want to lean in to all the questions because I think the right question at the right time can change someone's life. And once you kind of see where that north node is and those ingredients, you can come up with like a little statement like that for yourself to help you embody what it is that you came here to do, which may be important as you're deciding like what it is that you want to do next that really lights you up.
Okay, you have to do me next. I was just like looking it up real quick. So my sun sign is a Leo, but my north node is Aries in the 11th house.
Oh, so you should be leading different groups, different organizations, being a prevalent voice on social media. Because 11th house is groups, networks, and social media. Aries is the sign that says, I am. And Aries is the cardinal sign. It is known to be a leader. Um, Aries individuals can make excellent bosses. What's important for them is to have other people around them that help take the vision of the Aries person and actually get it across the finish line. So an Aries energy is the person who stands up in front of, an auditorium filled with people and they're able to share their message. And so I would say leaning more into that energy, but how you want to activate it with large groups of people in a way that feels almost fearless. Because when I think of Aries in a high form of frequency, it is powerful. It is the energy where you notice them when somebody walks, into a room. You feel like you're gravitating towards that bold Aries energy. So I would say leaning in more to what you're doing on social and what your voice is on social and maybe even large scale events that you would be planning, but doing it with that boldness and assertiveness as any good Aries would do.
Oh my gosh, I love it. I'm taking notes right now. So good. And I think so interesting about the North Node is like that is like the embodiment of who you're meant to grow into in this lifetime. And then the South Node is like in a past life. These are like the maybe more of the challenges or struggles you had or like comfort zone behaviors you fall into. So the opposite of the North Node is my South Node, which is Libra. So it's like anytime I'm finding myself in like that category of being, not that Libra has anything wrong with it, but it just means there's always a positive version of a sign versus a negative. So when I'm falling into those negative signs of Libra, I know like, okay, I'm not in my purpose right now. I need to like, go into that. So thank you for that. This is definitely a goal of mine to do everything you just said. So let's put it on the map. Well, Dalissa, I think I could ask you questions forever, but I just like love your wisdom. I want to respect your time today. Thank you so much for sharing everything that you have for us. I'm just curious if someone wanted to like learn more. I know you have like a YouTube channel, you've got a lot of things going on. Where can people find you?
The best place is at my website. I've got everything connected over there. That's spiritandspark.com, all spelled out. And there's a free gift on there too. So go over, check it out. And anybody can reach out to me with any questions that they have about any of the ideas and things that we discussed today.
Awesome. Thank you so much. We'll put that in the show notes for you.